So I've been asked a lot. I'm a new rider and I'm not sure which bike to get. What bike should I start out on? You know, it's very common, and a lot of people make choices that are not intelligent when it comes to purchasing their first motorcycle. And I guess that happens for many different reasons. Maybe people want to go and get the most bike they can for their money, right? It's human nature to kind of want to go out and get the best that money can buy. Or maybe others feel that, by buying the fastest bike, that they'll be the fastest rider. Or maybe they just like the way a particular bike looks. But that can be a big pitfall because what often happens is someone will buy a bike that's too big for them, too powerful to control. They may have an incident. And sadly, a lot of people give up riding before they ever really get started. And they miss out on so many years of enjoyment. But I thought about putting together this little commentary on, what things you should consider when buying your first motorcycle. I'll take you back to my experience. I made a mistake for my first bike. I was about 20 years old. I had a decent job, and that was the year the Hayabusa came out, and that was the fastest production motorcycle, and everybody had to have one. So did I. And so I saved up for about 8 months, and I remember I walked into the dealership, and I told the owner I want a Hayabusa. Believe me when I tell you that dealership owner tried his best to sell me anything but the Busa, but I had my heart set. He couldn't tell me otherwise. And I remember he tried to sell me a YZF 600R, which was very practical and still sporty. But I remember just nodding my head in disgust. I wanted the Busa, and so I bought it. Fortunately, I'm still alive today to tell my story, but it wasn't without incident. I think I've tipped that bike over about 3 times. I crashed it a couple of times, and I'm very fortunate. The bike was just too big. It was too big to handle, and it just had a lot of power for someone with no experience like myself. But coincidentally, the more experienced I got, the smaller my bikes got. I went from the Hayabusa, which I sold, and I bought a GSXR 1000, which was still too big for me, but it wasn't as fast as the Busa, right? And then from there, I sold that, and I bought an MV Agusta F4 1000, which I still have today, and a Ducati 999, which is slower than that GSXR 1000. And then from those bikes, I went to a Ducati 748, which was even smaller than that, and only had about 98 horsepower, if I recall. Then from the Ducati 748, I eventually bought a ZX7R. In fact, I like that ZX7R so much, I bought 2 of them and converted one for the track. And that's what I've had for most of the years that I've been riding. And I've ridden a lot of other bikes, but those are the ones I've owned. And the ones I've owned have gotten progressively smaller over the years. Until recently, I bought the H2, which is just out, from another planet altogether. But what's the point? The point is, when I bought those big bikes, I was afraid of it. I couldn't really learn. The bike was riding me, I was not riding it. And that's really no way to learn. I took an MSF course, I graduated, and I guess I thought I knew how to ride. I'd find open stretches of highway, and I'd probably do these little blasts. I'm not going to say how fast I went because I don't want to incriminate myself, but I thought I could ride because I could go fast in a straight line. But it wasn't until a good friend of mine took me to the track, and he showed me that I really didn't know anything. And when the corners came up on me, I didn't know what to do, and I crawled through them. And then I made a conscious decision that I was gonna take the time and make the investment to go to track and really work on my skills and learn how to ride. And I only wish I was more intelligent when I bought my first bikes. Those 4 or 5 years that I wasted on big bikes, had I would have started smaller, I might be an even better rider today. Well, what's the point of this rant or this commentary? Well, if you're on the fence, if you're a novice and you're thinking about what bike to get, there are a couple of bikes I would recommend. I'd recommend something small, something maybe around 300 cc's, 500 cc's, maybe a Ninja 300, or if you're a bigger guy, a Ninja 650. And understand something. And you can get in trouble on a Ninja 650. The bike's not slow, but you're less likely to have an incident on something where the power band is more forgiving. It's very easy to want to go out and buy 1,000 or 1,300 or 1,400 or whatever, a big bike, and say, well, I could just play with the power modes and tame it, right? But you got to ask yourself the question, are you really going to have fun on it? Are you really going to feel like you're getting the most out of the riding experience? Yeah, you'll be able to survive if you stay out of the power band. Power band meaning where the power comes on, where the hit comes on. Yeah, if you stay out of a certain rev range, on those fast bikes, yeah, you can live with the bike, you can survive with it, but you really aren't learning anything. You're selling yourself short. I never rode that boost in its power band, to be honest. I kept those revs around 5,000 all the time, and that was it. And just rode the torque through town. But there's so much more enjoyment to be had when you really get on the bike and you can control it and you have mastery over it. The good news is that if you start on a smaller bike, resale on these bikes are pretty good because people are always looking for starter bikes. So if you buy something small, chances are you'll be able to sell it after a year or so and get close to what you paid for it. So don't look at it as you're losing money, but look at it as you're building experience for minimal investment. And you'll be surprised how much fun you can have on smaller bikes. You have a lot of experienced riders who race big bikes who actually enter races on small bikes as well because they're more fun. They enjoy wringing a smaller bike's neck, figuratively speaking. There's a lot of excitement to be had. And I can't tell you the enjoyment that you also get, when you're on a slower bike at a track day and you're keeping up with somebody on a big bad 1,000. That's exciting. I remember I went to a track day in the Mid-Atlantic, and I was riding the ZX7, and there was another rider on a CBR 1000. And he would get me coming out of the last turn onto the front straight. And then I close up on the brakes, and then when we got to the technical section, I would pass him. And then he'd get me going back onto the straight again. And then I'd close up on the brakes, and then I'd pass him in the technical section. And we diced like that for 20 minutes. I mean, it was probably one of the most fun experiences I ever had at the track day. So, take that into consideration as well. But, start small. Don't be afraid to start small. Get a bike that's sensible. Get a bike that is light, that is nimble. And if it gets away from you and you catch it just in time and it's halfway tipped over, you'll be able to muscle it back upright. Something that if you give it a little bit too much throttle, it wakes you up, but it doesn't get away from you. Start something small, something that's good on gas, something that's not so torquey, something that's cheap to fix. and get as much experience as you have. Honestly, a season is good, and you'll learn a lot in that one season. That first 6 to 8 months is a very steep learning curve, and you can move up to something a little bit bigger after a year. But I think that's the intelligent way to approach this hobby. You don't want to get out there and get something that's overwhelmed and you're afraid of it, or you dump it because you can't control it, or you park it, you never ride it because of the fear. um, I remember one of my buddies. When we first started riding, he dumped his R6 and he kind of lost his enthusiasm for riding, and eventually became a car guy. Got an M3. So I'm not hating on him for the M3. That was a nice car, but he missed out a lot with the bikes. He just got discouraged because I think that bike was just a bit much for him. But for all of you out there on the fence, take your time, get something small, take your MSF, get a license, and be sensible on the street. Do a track day, and you'll really learn how to ride a bike, how to brake, how to corner, how to look through turns. You know, when it's cooler in the morning and the track is green or not as grippy, you'll learn how to control slides. If you do a track day in the rain, you'll learn so much more than you ever will just by going from stoplight to stoplight. Um, I would recommend staying away from the 1000s at least for a couple of years. And they don't have a 750 class anymore. But 750s used to be a nice middle ground. 750 is a good do-it-all bike. They're a little more torquey than 600s, but don't have that in-your-face horsepower like the 1000. Only Suzuki makes them. But you do have a couple of middleweights out there now. The 675 Triumph. You have the the 954 Ducati, or the 899. That was last year's model. There are some nice middleweight options that you can get, once you finally start to move up to the bigger bikes. Just shop around a little bit. But for your first bike, please don't do it. Even though you want to, don't do what I did. Be smart about it and save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of unnecessary repair bills. And you'll be fine. There was one other point that I wanted to mention about the bikes, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. If I remember it, I'll probably put up another vid. But you definitely, for your first bike, you definitely want to do something that will allow you to grow. And when you're riding it, you're not thinking about the bike itself. You're just thinking about the ride. You're thinking about your reactions and your reaction time, and you're paying attention to the traffic, and you're paying less attention to the power band on the bike. The bigger and faster a bike is, the more attention it takes to ride it. And that's the truth. That's the truth. So I want to leave you with that. And for all you novices out there, I hope you take this to heart. And I hope you, like me, can enjoy many years of riding.